Hey, welcome back, everybody. HSC Podcast number 20. Wow. 20. 20? Yeah. So, like, if you're at Starbucks, it's a large drink, even though it means 20. So, podcast number 20. We got Big Box Steve on the mic. Of course, co-host Derek, the Big Smooth. Back on the mic, Fresh Wes. Good to have you back, Wes. Missed a good podcast last week. So those of you who've been following and watching, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, hit that notification. But I thought it was a great podcast. So if you haven't seen that, check out last week's. This week, we got some really good topics, like really high in the media. Like, this is what's happening. I know we haven't always done that. But I think with the couple topics we have that are really hot in the media, this will be a good show here. So let's get started with the first one to talk about is labor shortage. So when you talk about labor shortage, it's like, do you guys feel it? I don't know how much you go out and you go to places like maybe, grocery stores or restaurants or things like that. Like, do you guys feel a labor shortage at all?
Yeah, most definitely. You can tell big time with the food industry. It's been about a few months, but we were going to get Chipotle one day, and
you can order online.
Yeah, and I was going to go order online, and it was disabled. They had disabled it because they didn't have enough people working, so they wanted people to come in to order so they could gauge and keep the flow going. So that was interesting. I was like, oh man.
You're the second person I've heard mention Chipotle and labor shortages.
Well, they need, how many people they have working at the same time, though? You know what I mean? It's like 6 or 7 people back there. It's same with Panda Express. They got 5 or 6 people working at the same time, all at one time. They have to be in cohesion. So, there's probably 9 people working at the same time, depending on breaks and lunch and everything like that. So I could understand with places like those that they need to have it's kind of like a conveyor belt with them. So
yeah, and a lot of those places, and I don't go to a lot of fast food, especially inside restaurants, things like that, but you see a lot of complaining about, not enough servers, not enough checkers in grocery stores, things like that. Is that anything you notice, Wes? Do you go to the grocery store at all? Do you feel like there's less checkers, or, you go to a restaurant, do you feel like there's less servers?
Yeah, I try to avoid. I live next to Winco, of course, but I try to avoid Winco because it's just too many people. I try to go to the store earlier in the day, and I go to Safeway, but Safeway has been hurting for years.
Well, they're also twice the price of everything.
Yeah, but when you're not shopping for 5 or 6 people, it's like whatever. I go there to get meat and stuff like that, but I just went to Burger King tonight, and there was 3 people. It seemed like there were only 3 people working there, but the food came out fairly quickly. But it's it's weird. You could just tell that there's a shortage, especially in the food industry. There's bartenders, there's people just kind of getting out of the service industry in general. They've been talking about how, I forgot the number of how many people just quit their jobs, in the service industry. So
right.
There just isn't people really just backing up, filling in the vacancies. You could tell, especially in food.
Do you think maybe the labor shortage is maybe a visual thing because it's the places that we go, because we go to restaurants and grocery stores and things like that, we think there's a labor shortage, but it's like you just said, that most people quitting the in service industry, right? But a lot of people leaving that. So maybe it's not a total labor shortage. Maybe it's just based on a lot of people are leaving that service industry.
Well, I think it's a lot of people are just tired of, like, we got the taste of the work from home and the whole thing of like, why should I drive to work for an hour, drive home for an hour, when these other jobs you can get, you just like get up, roll out of bed, go over to your desk, and you start work. And I think that's another like, people are like, I'm tired of doing that. And I think it's also a change in the mindsets of the work, live to work and work to live mindset. And I think nowadays no one really, it's kind of to the point where people are very wary of corporations. And so they're like, I'm not going to break my back for this company because they're just going to get rid of me anyway. They don't care about me. And so I think that's where we're at now, is you might have a labor shortage also because people don't want to stay at a company that sucks. Where before people just were like, okay, I just got to, get my paycheck and go and do this.
That's an interesting thought process because you see that a lot, right? I've read that and I've seen that many places where people are talking about this mindset. It's like, this is not worth it to me, or, I want to work at home. That it's an interesting mindset. And because you say, well, back in the day, that wasn't how people thought. Even probably 20 years ago, when we started working, like we never had a thought of like, I'm just going to stop working because they're not paying me enough.
Right.
I never had that thought. I don't know if you had that.
Well, I would here's the thing. When I got laid off due to COVID and we were punching the numbers together, it was better for me just to stay at home and take care of my son than it was to go find another job that was one where he'd have to be in daycare, and then, and for paying for schooling and everything like that, especially when he was being at home because the preschool wasn't open.
Yeah.
So I think that happened to a lot of people also. They had to start, schools weren't in session, there was all work, school from home. So people had to figure out, oh, well, I need to figure out a way that I could be at home. Because then another issue is if their kid got sick at all, anything, then they were not supposed to go to school. And how could you as a parent, if you both worked in an office or somewhere, able to sustain that?
Yeah, I think obviously the pandemic and everything, so maybe that accelerated what people's thought process already was, right? Because before the pandemic, you didn't have a lot of that.
No.
And then the price of daycare, just to be honest with you, anytime you enter daycare into the equation, when you're talking about like work from home and, and going into the office, having to get daycare, the little amount that people are paid and how much it costs for daycare, it's always going to be a huge factor. Because it's like $1,000 for a daycare a month, for probably an average, more in some places.
Mm.
So yeah, daycare is a big one into that. So I want to get your take on this, talking about this work from home. So I know you haven't been in a job similar to what I have, but I want to use this example. If I said, hey, Wes, you're in my job and you can do the exact same work from your home that you can do from the office, no difference in the work. How would you feel about that if I said, but you still have to come in the office and spend 2 hours a day driving, gas money, whatever it takes to come in the office? You as a worker in that position, how would you feel?
I would not like to come into the office every day. I have a relative that is kind of put in that same position, and they basically send everybody home. They have to go in the office maybe like once a week for a couple of hours, because they work for an import export company from Japan. So yeah, I would not. I mean, if I could do the same work from home, why would I want to deal with traffic every day? The price of gas is ridiculous. I mean, it's like $5.49.
And you don't get paid back for that.
No, not when gas is that expensive. So yeah, I'd much rather work from home. But I got offered a job, a tech company to work from home here about a year ago, but of course it fell through. But yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of work from home, remote work out there, right? But you still have a lot of companies that are pushing for return to office. You saw, so I don't know if you guys saw this, but Apple had a huge falling out because they had a very aggressive return to office schedule. So Apple had people quitting, all over the media. And then Google is pushing out return to work for some reason. Their executives coming out, putting out articles on that. But if you look at it as an average person, most people think, that's why I was saying, hey, Wes, what do you think on this? It just makes sense. If you could do the same work and save the money, why not work at home? So why are companies pushing for that, Derek? What do you think?
I think it still comes back to, and I think it's an old mindset. I think they believe and they want to establish, even if it is fake, the family environment. This is we're a family, and they if you all are in office and working together, you're more likely to stay together and be a family. Where people today don't want to do that. They just want to do their job and get off work. They don't want to have a bunch of hey, let's do a happy hour after work and let's do this. No, I mean, maybe the young, the early 20s somethings, but people with kids and stuff are no, I'm good. Right. I got to get home. And I just, I think it's just some companies, the CEOs and everything still have old mindsets that think this is the way you still run a company, where most people, if you look, a lot of companies now are getting rid of their brick and mortar buildings because they're why are we paying this much to have 6 people here?
Right.
So they're consolidating.
Especially if they can do the same work from home, that's pretty common.
Yeah.
One thing that interests me is, because I think it does have to do with that old school mentality that you're talking about. It's just because that's how, especially in sales, for example, that's how sales grew up, right? On a sales floor in an office, and you can't get that environment anywhere else. It's kind of an old school mentality. And I think there's probably a portion of people who work and are okay with going into the office and okay with the return to work. And I think that's probably an older demographic, to be honest with you. And not to say anything bad against, younger, Gen X or Gen Z or whatever, younger kids. They're just more tech savvy, and they understand that they could do the exact same work technically, right, through a computer. And maybe the older demographic just doesn't get that, they just don't understand that there is a virtual world out there. The internet exists and it came along really nicely. And so maybe that's not what they understand.
I understand it when I started first, getting used to online school, taking online classes, kind of the same thing. At first I was I want to be in the classroom. I want that interaction. It's easier for me to deal with, teacher basically giving out instructions. I learn better this way, but you just eventually get used to it. You eventually get used to the portals and how things, basically all it is pretty much a Zoom meeting now. It's just another Zoom meeting. So eventually, I think even the older generation, you just see the wisdom in it. It's And it's like I said, the gas prices are so ridiculously out of control that why would you want to commute to work? And especially when you have all these policies, like, hey, let's just start getting rid of roads and let's get rid of lanes and put up more biking lanes and paint the streets green so it makes everybody feel better. That you're environmentally conscious. Driving is just going to become more and more of a hassle.
Well, and what if you live in like the really bad areas for traffic, right? Like what if you're commuting in LA for 4 hours?
Yeah, it's not realistic. It's
Right.
like, yeah, just ride a bike to work. It's like, okay, yeah, I have a 2-hour commute. Thank you very much.
Or just stay home, like log into your computer and do the same work you would do at the office.
Yeah.
And I realize not everybody can do that, of course. Like we were talking about food service industry, right? They can't obviously work remote, like they got to be there and doing that. So I think the remote is also like different than that separation of labor shortage that we're talking about. Like just imagine if you're a server and you have to go in every day, deal with people, be on site, but then some of these other people are getting these remote jobs, right? And you're like, wait a minute, I could stay home and sit on my couch, but still do my job effectively
and not deal with anybody.
Yeah. And again, as long as you can do it effectively, then why does it matter? And that's what they're starting to see. So I do think that younger demographic you're losing some of that food service, that industry service. And that's why I think there's a perceived labor shortage. Because when you really look at it, unemployment is actually down to as low as it's been in the last 10 years. There's only like 6 million unemployed people, it's down to like 3.6% or something like that.
Well, the new unemployment claims are the lowest since 1969.
Right.
So
total claims, total people. No, it's just there's less people. Like yeah, there's gonna be fewer claims with less people. But yeah, if you look at the last few years, or not even like last 10, 15, 20 years, the sheer number is very similar or hitting the low as it's been. And so it's weird that you can hear unemployment being low, but people still have a perceived labor shortage. Because that's a real thing. Like you hear that everywhere, you see it everywhere. So interesting with the return to work. I want to see how that plays out. I think that's going to be there, because you see a lot of stuff fighting it, and it's almost like there's a division happening right now of like the people fighting return to work and the people pro return to work. We got a whole nother election on our hands about return to work. So that's an interesting topic, but not as good as the next one. And there's so much to wrap in this one. I think it could be its own show, but I want to kind of get our thoughts straight away. So we got the Buffalo, New York shooting, right? At this time, I think it stands at 10 killed, 13 targeted or hit. And so just a shooting in general, like, so mass shootings suck, right? And there has to be at least, I think it's 2 or 3, I think it's maybe 3 dead to be a mass shooting. So you go shoot 30 people, but if none of them die, it's not considered a mass shooting for some reason. So with all the stuff that's been happening in the media, what are you guys' first reactions to this shooting? What have you seen? What have you heard? Like, what's standing out to you?
Well, yeah, I was reading and it was kind of interesting. He had his own Discord chat room where he has, and they're finding out there were 15 users signed on to it. So I kind of want to see, Discord took it off, but I kind of want to see what that chat room had in it and what was talked about. And if you have like 15 users, other people listening to this chat room, it'd be kind of interesting as a fly on the wall to see what it was transpiring in that.
Well, he was live on Twitch too. So he went in with a live camera on Twitch, which is viewed by millions and millions of people. Twitch took it down within like seconds of it being, posted. But still, that was you have probably, a couple 100,000 people, maybe a millions of people that saw that before it got taken down.
Right.
So he was posted live on Twitch. He had, and that his Discord channel, the 15 people, that was 30 minutes before he left. Like he had many Discords before, some of them where he even had said he had mapped out that store, like he had already been planning it. So I thought that was an interesting article about that. But then again, like, do we know what's the validity behind that too? Right. So that's the other thing that I have a problem with. So Wes, what have you seen or what have you heard about this?
Well, I guess in June, there were warning signs almost even a year ago that there was he did a school project about murder suicides at his high school. And police were called to the school, but the police didn't seek it's called a red flag order of protection against him.
Yeah,
at the time.
It's like, should we be able to put a red flag order against a person permitting them or not allowing them to get guns or different things, right?
Right. Yeah, it's basically to buy firearms or purchase a firearm. And you see this, when there is a mass shooting, especially, at a school, it seems like everyone's like trying to get to, okay, were there signs? And there's always signs. But the problem is, there's only so much you can do, until something's done, until someone gets hurt and shot. So it seems like, just the whole, again, it's another example of this is a mental health crisis,
right? And our medicine system isn't exactly set up to help mental health, right?
No, it's there to basically get people hooked on things that honestly are almost as bad as the problems that they're dealing with. It doesn't really, it's basically a band-aid, to try to just have some sort of solution that's just not going to be a permanent fix.
So I have a question for you, Wes. Thinking about this guy in particular, right? Like, you obviously have mental health issues if you do something like this. Like, that's just a fact. But think about this guy, and this could be media, this could be not. I'm just going based on what's reported, that he had left writings about this being racially motivated. He specifically drove 200 miles away to a prominently Black neighborhood and a prominently Black grocery store. 11 of the 13 he shot were minorities. So outside of him being mentally ill, on a mental health state, how does that connect with the racially motivated part? Is that tied to the same as mental health, or is there other factors that create that racial motivation?
If you're everybody wants to blame, it's just look at the video game industry. Whenever there's a shooting, let's blame the games. Let's blame the content. Content is key, almost more or less than just overall mental health. Like what people watch, it affects people the way they act out their lives. So some people will watch stuff they'll watch videos of hate videos on YouTube or whatever, or they'll watch uh, videos about how, like, he watched videos about how to modify, firearms.
Right.
It affects the way that, basically your brain operates, and how you have an overall outlook of the world. So, whether it's movies or videos or people online that, he follows, um, I think it's they work together as far as like, mental health, and basically the content that,
Yeah,
they choose to view.
I get
And it's a
that.
rabbit hole that goes, you go from one thing that's, it seems very harmless, and you end up at a hate site, or hate speech. And so,
Do you think that content that they're taking in is equal or less than or greater than the mental health issue? And this is just opinion, because nobody could know this, right? Like, but do you
well,
think,
yeah, well, that comes down to, what is it, environment, or is it your,
right,
genetic makeup? And I think
similar?
it's kind of like the same argument. And I think, again, both play a factor in what a person does and how a person reacts. And, especially when it comes to angry issues, how, okay, does a person just sit there and they just let it, they let it go, or do they act on those impulses that make them, you know, and then that goes back into more of the mental health. Does this person have a predisposition to do
Right.
something violent because he's he's bipolar, or he's, has some sort of mental issue? Then that gets more into the genetic, the DNA of someone who has mental issues.
Well, so yeah, so you're talking about, I mean, so it's like going in a circle of this. Is it mental health? Is it environment and content? You know, um, yeah. And so that's a big question, right? So Derek, if you're thinking about that, what do you think? And again, this is an impossible question, but does mental health play more into that, or does what they're seeing, the content in their environment, have more to do with something like that, this last act?
I would say it would be mental health because, think about us growing up. You don't see me going out trying to rip someone's spine out or and go and finish him or anything like that. We played Mortal Kombat and stuff, and then we didn't want to go and that, or you might play Halo or like Red Dead Redemption, all these games, shooting games or anything like that. A normal person is just or watching Scarface or like, Black Hawk Down or something like that. A person that doesn't have mental health issues is just going to be like, this is entertainment, where someone who has mental health issues would use that as a trigger.
So what about when you start getting into, and we'll talk about this kid specifically, when you talk about his content and his environment, things you were watching and seeing. So he was allegedly, now again, this could be media saying it or not, this is what's reported, right? Allegedly, he was into a lot of information on the Great Reset. Have you guys heard of this? So there's a theory about the Great Reset, basically like white genocide. Depending on which side you read, they'll tell you differently, but the reality of the theory is that white people are becoming less predominant around the globe as far as population, and will continue to do that, and they're being phased out. And so it tends to be a very conservative, what they even call anti-Semitic supporting of this theory, right? And so they connected him to this Great Reset theory. They also blame Tucker Carlson for peddling, as they called it, this theory on his show of the Great Reset. And so when they say this is racially motivated, they're actually including talking about this Great Reset theory, and which is apparently causing white people to go out and shoot minorities. So that's kind of what the big buzz now around this is. Like, when you think about this, I don't know if when I think about this, I think you guys probably think the same. It's like, man, this is a terrible act of somebody killing people for no reason. I didn't even think about whether he was white, they were black. Like, I didn't think about that at all until the last few days of researching this.
All right. Well, I think you do have a history of it. So like school shootings, it's random because it's people they know. And so you've kind of got the feeling for that. But if you look at the other shootings that are not school shootings, so outside of school, so you're not in school, you have like, the old tales of going postal or whatever like that. But then you've had lately you had the Florida nightclub where they were targeting gays, and you've had this. Wasn't there one where a guy was targeting a Korean store?
There was there's been a few. There's been there was that Chinese nail salon. There was, a couple synagogues. There was, a couple different ones. It's funny that you say the going postal thing, because most of mass shootings have to do with work related, like previous work. It's like an amazingly high percentage have to do with like going and shooting up places you used to work.
Well, if you think about, I'm trying to think like a psychopath here, but if you look at it, if you're someone who'd worked at a job for 40 years and got laid off, or something happened, or you got something and someone like did a complaint against you and got you fired, and you thought your life was over because of that, that mentality, I could see all of a sudden that happening. Same with like school shootings. You think of people think that they're outcasts, bullied, think they're less than everyone else, so they're projecting that. And that's where you get into like these other shootings, and it could be racial or just bigoted thinkings on all of them, because it's just the problem is now it's just we see more of it now because everything's televised.
Right. And there's plenty of racially motivated or bigotry motivated, whatever you want to call it, shootings. But there's so many shootings comparatively to those. Like there's way more work shootings. There's way more school shootings. When you look at, say, this was kind of crazy looking at this data. From this year back to 2017, there's been like 42, something like that, mass shootings. In that short a period, that's like 10 a year, right? Or roughly, 8 to 10 a year. And believe it or not, like half or close to half of them were all like work related. Then there was your school shootings, and then you had some racially motivated shootings.
And that's another reason people want to work from home.
I don't want to get shot. So I thought that was interesting, talking about the shootings. So Wes, I got a good question for you. So there's a theory going around, and I don't know if you read this, but I'll explain it for everybody listening and for you. So the first theory is that there's a bunch of racially motivated shootings based on this great reset theory, right? Mm-hmm. And then the second theory coming out of Republicans, mostly like Tucker Carlson and some of the people on the right, is that it's a conspiracy to tell people that there's all these racial shootings when they're underreporting on all shootings, and trying to make a good percentage. So when you think about those two things, you got two sides. You got the left saying there's a huge problem with racial shootings, and the right saying that the problem is that you're not reporting correctly because you're not seeing how many total shootings there are.
Yeah, that's been going on for a while. As far as like talking about what the right says. The right's always saying, well, you don't report. I mean, you talk about these mass shootings, but you don't talk about all the children that are getting killed in Chicago from gun violence. And, it's just, that's been going on for a while. And it's that tug of war between, again, both parties that nothing really gets solved because you have extremes on both sides. So I think the replacement theory that you're talking about, they explain it as a conspiracy theory that claims there's a cabal of elites that are trying to replace white people with non-white immigrants.
Right.
So again, and it's another one of these theories that, there's people behind the scenes that are pulling strings to basically, whether it's put out information or putting out things to inspire violence and inspire mass shootings, or it probably gets even more bizarre than that, because once you start talking about the word cabal, you can go any direction when it comes to weird stuff, crazy stuff. So yeah.
Well, they specifically, not, I won't say they, let's be more specific. The media right now, CNN, MSNBC, these major left-wing medias are citing the fact that this shooter cited the Great Replacement in the memoirs that he left. So he wrote, what he was going to do, why he was going to do it. Said that, according to them, he had black patriotism writing in there, like they weren't as smart as us and they weren't as evolved as us, and also cited the Great Replacement theory, and then went and did this. So whether he wrote that or not, I don't know. That's what they're saying he wrote.
So they're possibly saying that someone actually put out that he wrote that, but it was actually someone else. It's just yeah, exactly.
That's what you have both sides saying.
It's another conspiracy theory. Like, okay, it comes down to, again, we're always looking for somebody to blame or to sue. That's another problem too. It's like, okay, so how, who gets dealt a lot of the blame here? Again, I think Derek's right when it comes to, more or less mental health. We all watch the same stuff in a sense every day on TV. Violence is in front of us. It doesn't matter where you look. And it's getting worse and worse. I mean, some of the stuff is really hard to watch because I come from an era where it was fun to watch sports. It's fun to watch movies. Now it's just getting really sick, disgusting. You don't want to watch it. But it doesn't make you want to go out and act on certain impulses just because, you get angry about, how, especially when you start talking about elites and how a lot of people just in this country are being oppressed. Doesn't make you want to go out and act on these impulses. It does come down to mental health and personal responsibility. But it's turned into a blame game. The left blames the right blames the left. And it's never ending.
I agree. I think that, these people have a hard time understanding. I guess so that question of, and this just brought this to my mind, but so Derek, when you think about indoctrination, is this a real thing? Is this happening to people right now where they're getting so indoctrinated with this stuff that it is causing them to do these things?
I mean, I can't say yes, I can't say no. I mean, it could be either way. It's just the same indoctrination of I don't want to go this far, but when the Nazis, they indoctrinated people, and it was more because what Hitler fed on was people were suffering. And thinking about it now, we have inflation, gas prices, everything. So what are people, they're looking for someone to tell them, why is this all happening? What is going on?
Right.
Give me this purpose. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of this, from all different sides. People are just going to start preying on people that are down on their luck and are just depressed or trying to find their self-worth. And you're going to be like, someone's going to come around and be like, hey, listen to me, I know what I'm talking about. And then they are going to go, oh, I'm doing something good now.
Yeah, I think that's the tough part here, is because as what you're saying is, as people get into struggle more and more, right? More poverty, more, struggle to make it, they're more likely to listen to whatever it is. And maybe it's some guy who may not have been anti-Semitic in the first place, but then ends up watching the Great Replacement video, right? And then turns into this 18-year-old kid that goes out and shoots 10 people.
Well, hold on, I'm trying to think of the movie with John Singleton movie, the college one.
Higher Learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Rappaport's character.
Mm-hmm.
He comes to college. He's just kind of a goofy white kid, and he gets pushed around and everything. And then here comes the neo-Nazis, and they're like, try to make him his brotherhood. And then what happens? He goes and shoots people. And that's kind of like his, that's what's happening. Is this kid could have probably had not so good of high school years, maybe. Just saying, maybe there was some black people that treated him badly, or he thought, or something, he got bullied, and then it triggered him to think this way.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, because why else would you do that, right? I mean, why else would you go out and do that?
Right.
I mean, yeah, I guess you could be, that involved in some kind of conspiracy theory, because people are crazy like that too. And that's the one thing they got to think about, is that there is just some people who are just nuts out there and have done some crazy things from every level. It's not just a white guy shooting black people, it's Ted Bundy, it's, John Wayne Gacy, like things like that, like those people are just nuts. There's really nothing you can do about that. So that's that mental health thing, but also I don't think you can come back from that with some of those guys.
Well, it's like the whole Charles Manson family, right? Wasn't that this whole thing too? Is he brought all these people together under peace and love, and then got them all to go, let's go murder some people and stuff. Right. So
it's kind of amazing what they can talk people into when you think about it. Nice. So let's move to Elon buying Twitter.
Supposedly.
So yeah, let's talk about that, because the big thing in the media right now is that Elon is trying to say that the deal's on hold because they reported this bot percentage way lower than what it actually is. So they've reported at like 5%. He thinks it's at least 25%. So he thinks 1/4 of the Twitter users are fake, which means that he doesn't want to buy a company with 1/4 of the users that they say they have. But here's the problem, is Elon already signed paperwork. And so now Twitter is pushing for him to not be able to back out of the deal. So that's what's happening right now. Forget all that stuff. Like, why would Elon want to buy Twitter? Like, what do you guys think? Like, what's his motivation here?
He's bored.
He's bored. He's got too much money. So he's like, hey, I'll just buy a social media company.
He went way above brand. Like, he's like, here's like a bunch of money, right? He has way above asking price, right?
Well, and he already owned 9% of the company because he bought, 9% of the shares and became the largest shareholder.
I think it's just mostly ego and, like, to make it, I don't know. Is he more right wing? Is that what's going on? Is that why?
He's weird. I mean, I don't think I would describe him as either.
Okay.
I think he really just wants to go with the opposite of whatever everybody says.
Yeah, because I know he said something like he was going to let Trump back in to Twitter.
Oh yeah.
That's what kind of made you wonder, like, okay,
Is he right?
you know, what is his but I think, yeah, more of a libertarian type of worldview, but not libertarian because even he doesn't probably want to be pigeonholed in that group.
No.
He has his own. The thing is, I think he the whole Twitter thing and pretty much everything he does is he looks at something, he looks at a problem, and he has a solution, right? With everything, and he thinks he's the smartest person in the room, and in general, he pretty much is.
In the
Yeah.
world, he thinks
And
he is.
yeah, and so basically he probably looks at Twitter and says this service has potential, but it sucks right now. The stock has sucked. You know, he had, I mean, I bought Twitter stock, you know, at one point because I was like, it's got to go up, right? Well, it's, you know, and someone's eventually going to buy it. I just didn't think it would be Elon Musk. It's bizarre, and you know, it's like, and again, this opens up a lot of a lot of different theories on why someone that powerful. It's always, oh, he wants to control content. He wants to control the way you think.
Right.
Which I think that's not really the motivation here. It's just he could do it. So why not? He has the money to do it. He has so much money, he can do whatever he wants. And he can do it. And Howard Hughes used to do the same thing. You know, it's like, I want to buy an airline because I can. And he says, you know, but he was an innovator. He can look at a problem and say, you know what, I could do this better. I could fix this problem.
But the pushback you get, like what you said, was people think he's doing it so he can control content.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's always going to be that. There's always going to be that theory out there. But I just, you know, when you look at the things that he does, I mean, especially the way operating Tesla, some of the things that he wants to do as far as like the underground tunnels, as far as like for traveling, it's sort of in that spirit where I say Howard Hughes, like he wants to take things and he wants to create something that no one else has really created, and he thinks he has the ability and the intelligence to do that.
Yeah.
One thing
he does. I mean,
yeah, he does. And he always comes out and he says things. I mean, especially when he talks about raising kids, you know, he's like, hey, I owe everything to my children because I chose to have them. They don't owe me anything because they didn't choose to be here. And it's that mindset. I look at him as more of an independent thinker. He wants to think outside the box. But there's a danger to that too, because again, you start going down, you know, like my way is, you know, better than everyone else's way, even though you have history proving that this is the way you do things and this is the way you don't. So
compared to the way a lot of people in power think, especially like globalists and what we call elitists and one percenters, he does have a different way of thinking about things, like, you know, the environment, you know, democracy, social medicine, things like that. Like he has a different way of thinking than a lot of elitists and globalists do, which I do enjoy about him. But I also think like he's that borderline like genius or crazy. Like he's kind of like on both the lines. Like you don't know if he's crazy or if he's a genius, and you kind of feel like he's both.
Well, on the wires, I just came up tonight. They said he got accused of sexual harassment, cash payoff. I mean, I haven't really looked into it, but it just popped up on the wires.
Oh, they're gonna look. There's gonna be so much bloodbath and Elon Musk bashing in the next year to 2 years. It'll blow your mind.
Oh,
like, you'll be able to turn on CNN and be like, another Elon Musk video.
Yeah. Musk exposed himself in proposition.
I'm sure he did.
Document show.
Yeah.
Company paid $250,000 for her silence.
Yeah,
you know?
Musk molested me when I was a kid. I want some money. Where's my money, Musk? I mean, you're going to see a lot of that because he's going against the grain, right? Like he's doing things that people don't want him to do. And so he's going to be ostracized for it. You know, it's kind of funny. Like Derek, I was making a joke when you talked about the dude getting arrested that attacked Dave Chappelle, but it's kind of the same thing. It's like, we don't want people jumping up on stage trying to attack actors, so we're going to make an example out of you.
Well, and the funny thing with that, as I read more, is he attacked his roommate before he attacked Chappelle. He stabbed his roommate. So then they were looking for him. And the only reason they found him is because he attacked Chappelle.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, I mean, you're still gonna get like the book thrown at you, I guess is the idea here. It's like the same thing with that. And when you start talking about Elon, it's like, Elon, if you stir the pot, like they're gonna come after you. Like Deshaun Watson, you get one sexual harassment case, you're gonna get 20. You know, you can't just have one. Like, people are gonna come after you.
Well, and they do that with everyone, and it's both sides. Like, you had James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, and then all of a sudden he was doing well and he's liberal. So then they started posting stuff that he said 10 years ago on Twitter.
Right.
And then you have the other side, and it's like, Chris Pratt or something like, oh, we don't like Chris Pratt, so let's find something that he did 10 years ago.
Yep. It's all across the board.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what side you're on. Like, if you get in the spotlight or you get in somebody's radar, like, they're going to go back and they're going to find stuff that, they can dig up on you. Did you see the stuff on this senator? Like, I don't know a lot about it. I just saw some random stuff, but they're like this young kid senator who like said something against the Republican Party, and even though he's a Republican, and all of a sudden he's just like, there's like videos of him doing all this bad stuff, and like just all kind, like, he's basically never going to be a senator again.
Well, the crazy one I found, I was just reading about, is the mayor of Sandy. Did you hear about this one? He was running for governor, and then they came and found out that him and his wife were involved in swingers chats and like
what?
Yes. I was like, what?
Well, and that's the thing. It's like you can't go into politics, or you can't, have these things happen unless you have nothing, right?
Or
then,
you're Teflon Don.
But who has nothing in their life? Like, that's some people we don't want running in office, right?
Well, that's why people that are running for office have lots and lots of money.
Yeah, you gotta hide that.
But again, if you're trying to, like, it's kind of one of the things you want to control content, and then what happens? Documents come out, they go on the wires, just happened now about a cover-up for of course it's a lot of things, people, a lot of politicians, a lot of stuff in their lives. Yeah, they got to cover up stuff, and usually it has to do with sex, or paying off a woman where there could be potentially damaging information that could come out,
like a harassment case or something. And like, those get paid off all the time.
Yeah. So
yeah, so that's so off topic, but it's so true, right? It's like, you're like, yeah. So last thing here, I'm gonna say, and then I'll let you guys wrap up. So regardless of what's happening with Elon Musk buying Twitter, a thing like that, I think everybody, like, you should take a little bit of time and listen to some of the stuff he says, some of the interviews he's done. I think he has a very unique look on the world that a lot of, number one, like, globalists and elitists don't have, but that a lot of normal people don't have. So when I was looking into the Twitter Elon stuff, I got into like a super deep rabbit hole of Elon, and it's pretty interesting. So that would be my advice. Like, check it out. Like, watch some of the old videos, some of the new videos. He says some good stuff. So final thoughts, Derek?
For me, my final thought is this, and for all the people that are worried, like Elon Musk is going to buy Twitter and then he's going to control the content. Thing is, with Twitter, You control the content. You control who you want to follow. You know what I'm on? I got a bunch of people who do football. That's what I follow.
Right.
It's like if I follow someone and then they start talking politics, I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to hear this. This is what I want to listen to, what I want to see. So you know what? It's not like Facebook. It's all these, most of these are celebrities and stuff. You could just be like, unfollow, I'm done with you. Like Facebook, you're pressured because they're your friends. You're like, oh man, I don't really want to, do this.
Yeah,
because...
you're gonna see it on there because you don't want to unfriend them.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like that drama. But with like Twitter, it's like most of the time it's like, all right, I'm following some, players or some sportscasters or whatever, celebrities. And then if you don't like what they're talking about, you just stop following them.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. That's awesome. Final thoughts, Wes?
Yeah, it's when you go, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and you're flipping through your phone and stuff, and then you're thinking about something or you're talking about something, and all of a sudden it pops up on your phone. Like I was talking about the metaverse, right?
Oh, that's
so then
up.
and so like I get some sort of pop-up about sponsoring. There's a metaverse like for the Meta Quest where you could basically live your life through the metaverse. You could build stuff.
That's a whole new episode. We're gonna do a metaverse episode because
I know.
It's insane, dude. It is insane right now.
Yeah.
Like you can't even imagine what's happening in the metaverse right now. And the fact I just said that sucks.
Yeah, it is because people are like in like wood shop. You remember in high school, you had to take wood shop and all this stuff, and it's like people go in the metaverse and they go into wood shop. It's like, really? Like, this is what you do in the metaverse here? It's like
it's insane,
it looks
dude.
So innocent, but I bet you it gets a lot darker than that.
We'll do an episode on the metaverse because we got to, because it's crazy. Yeah, that's insane. So great show. Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and then hit the notification bell so you can get the playlist of all the old ones. We're now on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Anchor, and we're on YouTube. So thanks for watching. Thanks for showing up, guys. We'll see you next time.